Hello, people. How you doing today? I am here with James Proctor, and I'm Lee Cole 3, and we are going to discuss today a very interesting subject. But before we get into it, I want to say, James, how you doing today?
Hey Lee, I'm doing really well. Hope you're having a great weekend.
Yes, I am. Very good. Watched probably one of the best UFC cards ever last night. It was a
Oh, very good.
phenomenal card. Every fight was exciting, exactly the way it should be. So for UFC fans, if you have not seen that card from last night, go watch it. Okay. Okay, so we're going to talk about Willie Boy Johnson, right?
Yep.
And we originally were going to we're going to talk about a meeting that took place between John Gotti, supposedly took place between John Gotti, Sammy Gravano, and PITERA at a restaurant. And once we researched it and talked to a couple people, I like to know where they got the information that this meeting took place because it makes no sense that this meeting took place. Could Samuel Gravano have met in this meeting with somebody? Yes, but you got to remember it's informants that put out there about this meeting. And let's run down what meeting are we exactly talking about, James?
Yeah. So what supposedly happened is that there was a meeting sometime in 1988 or so, which involved Sammy, Pa- Sammy, Pa- Sam, Sammy Gravano, Tommy Karate, and John Gotti, and this was taking place in Bath Avenue, and it was in a diner there in Bath Avenue. And supposedly the meeting was something to do with Willie Boy Johnson either planning the hit or it was to discuss after the hit. And
Okay,
so
so
that's what
what
it
we're
was
supposed to
supposedly
believe in
about.
this meeting at this time that John Gotti, who was the most filmed man in America, or in the world, he had agents following him everywhere. That he went with Sammy Gravano to meet with Patera and to talk about killing Willie Boy Johnson, and we'll get into Willie Boy Johnson. But
Yeah.
people, we're going to talk about this, but I want you to remember one thing, and you can give us your opinions underneath here. Why would John Gotti go and talk about a hit on Willie Boy Johnson? Why wouldn't he just send Sammy? Why wouldn't he send Luciano or somebody around him? Why wouldn't he send one of his guys to do it? Why would the boss go meet with a guy, Patera, who at that time, what was his rank at that time?
He was a soldier at the time. He was known as a couple of things. He was known for dealing drugs at the time. Also, remember the family, the Bonanno family, was trying to get back on the commission, so they weren't even really recognized. But he was just a soldier at the time. He worked through up through Anthony Sparrow.
And one of the Bath Avenue boys said that they put together money and sent it over to John Gotti because he's sitting in this restaurant. And then Sammy Gravano talks about it.
Yeah, it
But
was some sort of, it was like a bottle of champagne that was supposedly was on there. But I wish we had that had the video. But I remember exactly on that video where Sammy talks about it. So Sammy's meeting with Jimmy Calandra, and Jimmy relays the
not
story.
Jimmy,
Hey,
he's not meeting with Jimmy Calandra.
no, I'm talking about in his podcast.
Okay.
Okay. And so what I remember on that is Jimmy Calandra relayed the story. Oh, me and Paulie G gave a bottle of champagne to you guys at the table. And at the first, he did not remember anything. I'm
No,
talking
he
about
kind of mocked it.
he mocked it. He said, "Oh, I don't." And then later he said, "Oh yeah, yeah, I remember something. Yeah, someone brought over, some champagne or something." But he didn't remember that meeting.
And
So
you know what? We have pretty intelligent people here that watch this show and they're they're mob enthusiasts. I want to ask you a question. Right underneath this video, why would John Gotti go to a meeting to talk about a hit when he is the most surveilled man in America at that time? And why don't the FBI have any recordings of him getting out of the car, going into the meeting, any reports? He didn't do anything without being
yeah,
followed.
you know what would have normally happened is that in that time, what we know about meetings with John Gotti was, especially from other families, they would come to him. They would either come to the Bergen on the weekend or they would come to the Ravenite during the week and meet with him. John very rarely would go out and to another area and meet with, especially a soldier.
Yes, I can understand him. And why would it be the soldier? Why wouldn't he meet with Anthony Sparrow, who's his boss?
Exactly.
Why would he like go to the soldier and say, "Hey, dude"? So that means there's another person out there that can testify that he ordered a murder. And we don't get me wrong, we all know that PITERA is not a rat. Sammy was.
Right.
Okay, so we just want to put that out there before we talk about this story, because now we're going to move on to Willie Boy.
Yeah.
Okay, give us a rundown on Willie Boy, exactly who he was.
Yeah, so Willie Boy Johnson, excuse me, my throat was a little dry. So Willie Boy Johnson, he's actually a little bit older. He's about 5 years older than John Gotti. He was born in 1935. He is one of five siblings, and he was raised in Canarsie, Brooklyn. And then later they settled in Red Hook, Brooklyn. But anyway, Willie Boy was part Native American, and then his mother was Italian American. And so the family he grew up in, his father was an alcoholic. It was just a really horrible environment. And then also, he was bullied a lot as a kid. You know, he was made fun of as mixed heritage and everything. But Willie Boy ended up growing up fast, being good with his hands, became, pretty big guy. And he was not someone to mess with as he became a teenager.
And there were two separate gangs. You had John Gotti running around with his group, very tough guy, and then you had Willie Boy, and they collided, and there was going to be a confrontation, and this is how they met. And I'm going to read something, and I'm going to give you an idea of how they met, just so you know. And this is from the last Mafiosa. Just so, okay, and
this was when Gotti was 16. I believe that Willie Boy would have been 21 at the time.
Okay, so I'm going to read this right now. At the age of 16, John Gotti knew what he wanted. What he wanted was a piece of the action from a crew of thieves who were ripping off warehouses in East New York and Brownsville. The crew was protected by Willie Boy Johnson, on his Willie Boy, who was Native American on his father's side, and on his mother's side, he was an Italian. Real tough guy. He was known in the neighborhood as someone you never wanted to mess with. To establish his territory, John Gotti, along with his lifelong friend Angelo Ruggiero, met up with the crew and administered a beating on its leader. Angelo watched John's back. The leader's crew wasn't watching anybody's back. They just watched as their boss took a beating from 16-year-old John Gotti. He and Angelo were told, when Willie Boy finds out, you both are dead. Gotti's response was, F Willie Boy. Willie Boy went hunting the neighborhood for John Gotti. He wanted the guy that beat up the crew chief and said, F, and John Gotti sent back, F Willie Boy. He wanted him real bad. So Gotti decided to help Willie Boy find him by getting the word out to Willie Boy that he would meet him at an old vacant lot off Fulton and Rockaway, waiting for Willie Boy. Such balls moved Willie Boy, who then decided merely to just put John Gotti in the hospital and not kill him. Surely enough, Willie Boy arrived at the lot, saw Gotti leaning against the fence like he didn't have a care in the world. Willie Boy greeted him with, "Hey, F sucker." You get your ass over here. Gotti smiled and asked, sucker. Then he walked over to Willie Boy and pulled out a small, broken, low-caliber handgun and asked, how about if I put two in your hat? Willie Boy was even more impressed with the balls on this 16-year-old kid. Their difference was resolved, and Willie Boy told afterwards, I believed in John Gotti from that point on. I said, this kid's the real deal. Okay, so I just wanted to read you that, and that's from the last Mafiosa. And what do you think about that meeting? That meeting right there. So Willie Boy's older; he's a grown man, and he's going to beat this 16-year-old boy up. And they just became friends. And the most amazing thing is you got this 21-year-old man and this 16-year-old kid, and the 16-year-old kid was the boss.
Yeah, exactly. And so, he ended up becoming the boss of that Fulton Rockaway boys pretty early on. And he had much older people with him in that in that gang. And anyway, yeah, what I see about it is that one, John Gotti was a tough guy. I know that Sam Gravano many times he talked about how he felt he could have beat up John Gotti, but the thing is, both of them were very big. They were good with their hands, but John Gotti was a bigger guy than Sammy, so it's kind of hard for me to believe that Sammy had his way with him. But what it showed is that John Gotti didn't have trouble and didn't mind standing up to a guy like Willie Boy that was, about 6 foot tall and, 220, 230 of pure muscle.
Yeah. Okay. So at that point you have, so these guys become close, but there's one problem. Since 1966, Willie Boy was an informant.
Mm-hmm.
So for a long portion of his friendship with John Gotti, he was informing. And why don't you tell us about a famous hit with an Irishman that the information was given by Willie Boy?
Yeah. So what ended up happening is that in the early 70s, you had this Irish guy that was, if you remember, there was Gambino. He was kidnapping people. He actually kidnapped one of Gambino's relatives, and so they
killed him, and they killed the relative.
They killed him. Right, exactly. And so anyway, they had brought in. So Gambino had actually wanted Gotti and his crew to take out the Irish guy, and they ended up doing it in a bar.
McBratney was the name of the Irish guy.
McBratney was the Irish guy. And anyway, so they go into the club, and McBratney's a tough kid too. So I mean, there were three of them, Gotti, Ruggiero, and they ended up having a lot of trouble, and they ended up killing him in the middle of the bar, unfortunately. And so, but they got away, and no one in the bar would say who did it. But Willie Boy Johnson, though, gave him up to the.
Well, Willie Boy said that he heard John Gotti talking about it.
Yep.
Willie Boy, and this is when they say, "Oh, Willie Boy was a good friend of John Gotti's." Come on, no, he wasn't.
No, he wasn't.
Willie Boy at that moment got a hold of that, and he was given $600 for that information.
He was given $600. Yep.
And because of Roy Cohn, who was a fantastic lawyer, Gotti only went to jail for a couple of years on a manslaughter charge.
Yes,
and how
exactly.
this guy pulled that off to this day is beyond me. Because you would figure it would be murder, not manslaughter. You walk into a bar to kill a man,
Yeah.
But I guess Roy Cohn made it look like McBratney was attacking them.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that's definitely what happened, and and also these attorneys, and if you get a good attorney, they can make things happen. And so, but he was told to accept the manslaughter charge, and so he was in prison for a couple of years for it.
So he comes out. Willie Boy's still at his side, and Willie Boy's at his side. I mean, he trusts him. This is a guy that he admires. This is a guy that's older than him. So explain to me how they finally found out that Willie Boy was an informant.
Yeah, so what ended up happening is that in 1985, there was Willie Boy got outed by the government. So they had a public hearing that year. And so the prosecutor, Diane Giacalone, revealed that Johnson was working for the FBI. And basically they were doing that as an attempt to convince him to do a plea bargain and testify against Gotti. And I've read the stories from Gleason and a lot of these others, and they were ticked off that Diane would do that, because that ended up putting a target on Johnson's back, and it also was nearly a 20-year relationship that they basically at this point had to terminate because they weren't going to get any more information. So what Giacalone did was just horrible.
And Willie Boy went and apologized to John Gotti, and John Gotti said, "Well, disappear, guy." They offered him the opportunity to go into witness protection program, and he refused.
He wouldn't do it. No.
So he went back to his same neighborhood where everybody knew where he was.
Yep.
And eventually, it was decided that Gotti didn't look strong by not taking them out.
Right.
And they were afraid that there was other information he can give up. So it got to the point where they just decided that Willie Boy had to go. Is that pretty much it?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So remember, it's 85 when he gets outed, and 86, and remember when Willie Boy. What's interesting is that when Willie Boy got outed, this was before John Gotti became boss. It was later in 85 in December of 85 when the hit takes place, and then in January of 86 when he becomes boss. Originally, Gotti was planning on having Willie Boy part of the hit against Castellano, but fortunately for Gotti, he never mentioned it to Willie Boy because Willie Boy was in jail at the time, and so that could have gotten outed by Willie Boy if it happened. And so anyway, in 88 when Willie Boy gets killed. So this happens 3 years after it's found out that he was working for the government.
Okay, now let's talk about the supposed, and we have big questions about this meeting ever taking place with Gotti in it. Gravano could have been there, but let's talk about the supposed meeting at the restaurant and who met who.
Yeah, and so what ended up happening was that there was supposedly a meeting where John Gotti, the boss of the Gravano of the Gambino family, along with
you said it right, the Gravano family. Sammy Gravano would actually make you think it was the Gravano family.
Yeah, I don't know why I said that. John Gotti and then Sammy the Bull, so his underboss. So they supposedly drove to Bath Beach in Brooklyn to meet with Tommy Karate PITERA at a diner. And
so they didn't call for Tommy to come to, the Bergen Hunt Club or the Raven Night. Yeah. They decided to go out in public and actually meet with him.
Yeah. I mean, it just didn't make. If you remember in 1988, this was where Gotti was well known. Everyone knew him. He was one of the most well known faces. If anyone is alive, then John Gotti was one of the most well known faces of all time. During that time, and Sammy the Bull wasn't so much. They always saw him, holding an umbrella or whatever.
Right.
But he was. There was no way that you'd have a boss go into, in my opinion, go into Bath Beach and just meet with Tommy Karate. Also, the thing is that goes against the protocol. You would have wanted to at least speak with Anthony Sparrow about this, right? I mean, you wouldn't. I would have thought Anthony Sparrow would be at the meeting. Why didn't they go to Sparrow's club? He had a club. He was the one person allowed to keep a social club, and so
explain what happened. Okay, so they decide they're going to kill him. Okay, and so we know what happens. We have an idea who did it, but explain how the hit went down.
Yeah, so basically what happened is that what we're told. I'll say what was told is that PITERA murdered Willie Boy Johnson as a favor to John Gotti, and at the time Gotti was close friends with Joe Massino, and we know about that. But anyway, the actual hit itself, that happened on August 29th of 1988. And
it was all over every newspaper in New York. I remember back then. It was everywhere.
Yeah.
That killing was everywhere.
Yeah, it was.
News, everything.
Yep. And there were two people involved. I mean, we always hear about Tommy PITERA, but there was also another guy named Vincent Giattino, and he went by Kojak. And so what ended up happening is the two of them ambushed Johnson in front of his Brooklyn home as he was walking to his car, and they fired. They said like 19 rounds, but he was hit.
5 bullets in his head, 5 in his back. I mean, it was a brutal hit.
Yep. And then they put these barriers on the street to keep them from getting pursued by police. So PITERA knew how to do these hits, and so the word was that PITERA did this as a favor to Gotti. But the truth is that to get rid of Willie Boy Johnson, the need was to have someone that, I mean, I'm sure he knew who Tommy PITERA was, but Johnson would have known most of the people within John Gotti's crew. He would have known Sammy, he would have known all of them. So it made sense that you would have farmed that off to someone that, one, that was efficient and effective, and two, someone that could maybe get close to Willie Boy Johnson where they could get him. And so that's what ended up happening. Johnson was still doing stuff on the street. He was putting money on the street. He was, he was gambling. He was doing stuff.
And he wasn't supposed to be doing any of this stuff.
He wasn't supposed to even be there. And he just wouldn't stop. And so that's what ended up happening. And he got hit, 5 times in the head and 5 in the chest, you said. I mean, they fired at least 19 rounds at him. I mean, he was definitely dead when they were done.
So this was done to protect the Gravano family, right? Okay,
Yeah.
because we might as well change the Gambino name to the Gravano family. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
So just so you know, this is Anthony Sparrow walking with Tommy Crotty, and these guys they were close. I mean, Sparrow was the boss of that family in the Bonanno in that area, along with and Crotty was his main, and Tommy Crotty was his main man. But see, okay, so we talked to Angel Gotti about this, right? Now, Angel Gotti says there's no way that her father ever met with anybody at that time because he was so surveilled, and it makes no sense. But there's no doubt that John Gotti ordered this to happen because he had to. Would you pretty much say that's accurate?
Yeah, I mean, he had to do that, and it would have made sense that the way that the person that did it, I mean, it was someone that was effective. But as far as meeting and getting a bottle of champagne, that's really a stretch, and it just doesn't, to me, is after I read a lot of the stuff that, and we've seen it repeated so many times that, oh yeah, this happened, but then when you step back and actually think about the logistics of this, it doesn't
make sense. Because and Angel also talked about when she went to visit her father one time when he was in prison. I think in 1986, she was talking about Tommy Crotty was in at the same time, and she seen him in the waiting room when they were getting visitors that day.
Right.
And, they could have known each other. There's no doubt they could have known each other, but he wouldn't go out in the street and meet him like that. That would be like the Chin meeting with somebody out in the open like that to describe a hit. I mean,
you don't do that. You insulate.
Chin was very famous. Gotti, the Chin and Gotti at that time were the most surveilled men. One was in a robe, one was John Gotti, and they couldn't move around without those cameras moving or being followed.
Yeah, that's just a lot of risk for Gotti to take to go there, and also you always if Gravano was a good underboss, he would have said, John, you don't need to come to this.
And then
and I don't think it happened, like this.
And let's remember where this started from Jimmy to Sammy, and testimony basically that said that talked about the bottle being sent. But see, that's the problem, people. We have informants that give out information, and it's taken like it's solid information. It's taken like it's set in stone information, and it's not. If you sit back and really think about some of the things they say, it makes no sense. It doesn't.
Well, yeah, and they tell, and then what bothers me about the whole informant stuff, not saying that all informants do this, but the government, many times they'll go talk to the informant and they tell them what to say. They agree this is,
or they hint around to it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just, I've noticed some things from a couple of the people that have shows that talk about stuff that they don't really have that much knowledge of that life as you would think they would.
And let's get back to Sammy again. So Sammy pretty much said that, okay, so they decided to take Willie Boy out
Mm-hmm.
for being a rat. And 6 years later, 5 years later, Gravano was ratting out PITERA and his partner. PITERA was found innocent of that charge, but was charged with 4 other murders. And then he also testified about the Willie Boy hit with Gotti. So Sammy, it's kind of ironic that Sammy, who is Mr. Sitting at the table angry that Willie Boy is a rat, winds up doing the same damn thing, but at a much higher level.
Yeah, exactly. And understand that Gravano didn't really know Willie Boy Johnson that much until maybe the mid 80s. And so
I think he said he met him once or something.
Yeah, met him once. I mean, they weren't close, nothing like that. And so,
and if he said he met him once, the odds are they probably never met.
Yeah, that's true. But what's interesting, the thing I wanted to say was that I think it's ironic. So in '92, PITERA is indicted and tried for Johnson's murder, but he's acquitted. And like you said, Gravano testified in that. But it's interesting, Giattino was actually convicted of it. So I'm not sure how PITERA is not, but the other guy is. But they did convict PITERA of 6 other murders. So,
I
don't understand how that happened.
A lot of times it's just somebody has a better lawyer. Who knows? He could have what kind of lawyer he had. And as we know, both these men are in prison now. Giattino, he basically asked to get out a couple times. He's been rejected.
Yeah.
And Tommy PITERA, same thing. So you have these 2 guys in prison, and they're going to die in prison, most likely.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like that. There was not a global plea or anything like this in this case. And so, yeah, you're right that PITERA was acquitted on that, but obviously got the other 6 murders, and so he's not going anywhere.
So overall, what's your opinion on this?
Well, it's just, I think one of the things that we want to do is talk about history and what is correct and what's not. We see this from different people. We see it from Mikey Scar. We see it from others that want to try to get history right. And so the thing is, this story's been going around for at least since 2001, when the trial took place. There was this diner, and John Gotti and Sammy Gravano was meeting with Tommy PITERA, and they get a bottle of champagne from a couple of gangsters in training, and it's just not true. It's just not true, in my opinion, that this happened the way that it's said. Some elements of it are probably true, but the idea of John Gotti, the boss, being there, that's just not plausible, in my opinion. And the reason it's important is, when you have little things like that are not true that are being said, it starts to question everything a certain person says when they're found out to not be true on small things.
Okay, a couple of things that I want to talk about. First of all, please subscribe, hit the bell, the reminder bell. And if you're not a sub, please sub. We have quite a few people that watch and are not subbed. And if you haven't, please give us an opportunity. Next thing I like to talk about is our website. And here's what realmobcontent.com. That's the website. If you go here and sign up, and if you go to the front page here and sign up and go to the bottom here, it says fill out this form. Once you email us, we'll contact you with information receiving a free gift from us. So fill that out, write to us, we'll write back to you, and we'll get your address, and we're going to mail something to you at our cost. Just to know that you went in and checked our website. And just so you know, if you pull this up on your phone, it looks kind of yucky, and we're working on it. And that's going to be done this week, where it's going to be totally resynced into a mobile version. But on that mobile version too, you can get right at the bottom of the first page. You can go right to this, fill it out, and we'll send you the gift that we're talking about.
Yes.
So let me take that down. And once again, that's realmobcontent.com. Okay. So I just found this whole thing fascinating. And when we start doing research, it's amazing when you sit back and we were looking at this meeting where it just didn't make sense that it would take place. And hey, listen, we might be wrong. Maybe it did take place. Maybe John Gotti made a bad move and a bad decision to go out and sit down and talk to a soldier about a hit.
And another family,
But as we know, PITERA never ratted. PITERA will never talk about it. His partner who was with him will never talk about it. Right. And we definitely know Willie Boy Johnson ain't never going to talk about it.
Yeah, right? Exactly. So yeah, I mean, to me, that's what's interesting about when we start researching a show, we get an idea for a show, and then we start going down a path, and then it starts uncovering stuff that we weren't expecting. And so it's just kind of interesting to me.
And people, if you want to donate to this show, you can. There's a heart underneath here. You can hit it. You can donate. You can send to the Cash App, which is running underneath here. And if you don't want to, that's fine too. But we have several things coming up, and we're going to talk about those. But please go to the website because that's going to be connected to all the stuff we're doing.
Yes.
And we just appreciate you watching us, and especially for our loyal followers. James, is there much that you'd like to say? Anything?
No, I just appreciate everyone, being sticking by with us. I mean, I love the comments that we're getting. We're just going to continue to put out the best content that we can, and we enjoy doing all this for you.
We get several remarks now where people actually say, we love your content, we watch you. People that say that they like our show the best when it comes to content. And that feels good when people say that.
Yeah, it really does. And I feel like we've got, it's what's exciting to me is, we have the people that have been with us for 2 years and they comment, but then we get a lot of new people. We're getting, it's just amazing the amount of new people that we're getting on a day-to-day basis now, and they're engaged.
That's because of you, James. They're like, we want to hear the smart guy, not the dumb guy.
No.
Okay. Well, anyway, it's been a pleasure, my man. I hope people like this. Everybody take care. Enjoy your week this week. Everybody stay safe. Bless you all. Take care.